Let's bring in Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett, Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell, and host of Stacy on the Right on Sirius XM Patriot, Stacy Washington. What a pleasure to see all three of you. Gregg, to you first. Today in the briefing room, Ian Sams, one of the spokespeople for the White House counsel's office, tried to act like, well, again, now Robert Herr, the special counsel, is the enemy, and acted like, oh, well, he is just a politically motivated liar, and there's nothing there, and that all of the issues of Biden's cognition and faulty memory were just made up, that this is just a, I'll use the word, just a big witch hunt.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say read the report. It's more than 300 pages, and it's a double whammy. I mean, first of all, Dagan, Biden escapes prosecution for doing the same thing Trump did, but Trump gets criminally charged. Biden doesn't. I mean, how in the world do you explain that kind of disparate treatment to the American public already convinced that our justice system is politically biased and weaponized against Republicans? You can't explain it because it's actually true. And second of all, the report laid bare in alarming detail how Joe Biden's mental state has declined to the point he can't even remember when he was vice president. The report says he routinely struggled to communicate, seemed lost and confused about events, times, and places. His critical thinking skills are receding at a frightening pace, and he wants to serve another term.
So, Stacy, I want to draw your attention back to the poll we referenced. This is an NBC News survey. 76% of Americans say they have a major or moderate concern about Joe Biden's mental health. That was taken in late January. So now we have the Herr report that comes out and basically underscores what the NBC poll shows, which is Joe Biden is cognitively declining. And then he goes on TV last night and bumbles and mumbles and gets misinformation put out there. What does this do politically? Can Joe Biden actually run for office, or are Democrats actually looking for an exit strategy?
Well, behind the scenes, certainly, I think they're looking for an exit strategy. But out front, Karine Jean-Pierre spent a good amount of time with a good White House correspondent here from Fox News, Ducey, asked her some very pointed questions, and she deflected. She sought to make it seem as if it was a figment of his imagination. But all of us as Americans know someone personally who was elderly, who has some bit of decline. And we understand that this is a difficult time in their life and they need rest and care and love. Instead, this man is wanting 4 more years in the Oval Office. So it's kind of ridiculous. And the subhead from Herr's report, the headline was, we can't charge him because he has memory issues. The subhead was, if he has too many memory issues to be president, well, to be prosecuted, then he has too many to be president. So I think a lot of Americans, this was a turning point for them. The Democrats are scrambling behind the scenes, but out front, they are a unified, still Biden type of a situation.
Yeah, but Joe Biden is the victim. That's how these mouthpieces, these toadies, Gianno, who've been lying to the American people for years. Shoot, most people wouldn't let Joe Biden feed their fish while they were away for the weekend. But these lying toadies have acted like what you're seeing and hearing and feeling and your common sense, all of that's wrong. But now he's supposed to be the victim of this evil Robert Herr.
You know what? I got to be very clear and honest with you guys here. This is not political. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This isn't about the 2024 election. Joe Biden's state of mind is dangerous to us all. If you're making decisions in the Middle East, we got a war in the Middle East right now, and he may forget a detail, a very important one, and order his generals to take an action that could negatively impact us. That is what we're looking here. This isn't about an election. The people in his cabinet, Democrats on Capitol Hill, those who voted for him, need to be very clearly and loudly saying this should be up for consideration for the 25th Amendment. Joe Biden, per the report, isn't someone who's able, if I own a Popeye's chicken restaurant, he's not someone who can be a cashier. That's how dangerous of an individual he is. And this isn't about me trying to say, oh, yeah, I think Trump should be the president and all. None of that. We are Americans. And Democrats who continue to get on TV and defend what Joe Biden has become are in a position where they have to ask themselves, do you love your political party more than you love your country? That's where we are. This is a state of emergency on every level.
That is the question, Gianno, no doubt. And it seems like they're loving their political party instead of the country. And when it comes to Papa Joe, when he's in trouble, you guys have all seen the liberal vultures, they circle around in support of him. One Democratic strategist, they told the New York Times, quote, the blessing for Biden is that he was old before this report. He'll be old after this report. We all knew he's old. And age matters, says the New York Times. That's why Biden's age is his superpower. And then there's Kamala Harris.
The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated, gratuitous.
Gregg Jarrett, good gravy. I mean, the fact that the media is going to claim that Joe Biden's age is his superpower when he can't put sentences together, doesn't know world leaders, doesn't know what country goes with what leader? Come on.
Yeah, Kamala Harris vouching for Joe Biden, is like Curly endorsing Larry or Moe and the Three Stooges. I mean, look, all you have to do is look at Biden's news conference last night, an epic blunder, and it reminded me of Richard Nixon facing a hostile press corps at the height of Watergate. It always got ugly because nobody was buying what Nixon was selling. And the same thing happened last night. The shouting, the confrontational questions, the incredibly weak responses by Joe Biden. And then he unwittingly proves his own mental problems when he confused last night the leaders of Mexico and Egypt. How do you do that? And that came days after he recounted these conversations. You played one of the clips. He's supposedly having talks with leaders who've been dead for years. I mean, Biden has no grasp on reality. He told three different whoppers that even CNN felt obliged to expose today. And, to their credit, there are some Democrats who were sounding the alarms on Biden's candidacy. Paul Begala, David Axelrod. I think as Joe Biden's ratings continue to plummet, as his mental instability becomes more conspicuous, I would expect party elders to begin to lean on Biden's families to convince him it's time to pull the plug, abandon the bid for a second term.
Stacy,
and I absolutely agree with that. And
go ahead,
if I can
Gianno.
jump right in, Joe Biden has become a national security risk. We saw the report yesterday, but you know who knew this information before we saw in the report? Leaders across the world. Why do you think Hamas attacked Israel? Why do you think Putin went into the Ukraine? Why do you think that Iran, using their proxies, Hezbollah, has been attacking American soldiers to the degree that they've killed some of our blood and treasure? They knew what was going on with Joe Biden already, and they knew that he wouldn't have the capacity to provide a forceful response. This is a dangerous territory that the Americans are in right now. And the people on the left need to be very clear and vocal about where they stand, because now it's about America and America only.
Stacy, but what should be the GOP strategy in all this? I think that it's do not attack Joe Biden. You say he is a desperately ill, infirm, elderly person. It is to go after all of the toadies around him, including Kamala Harris, all of the people who perpetrated this vast fraud on the American people, which is now lying to them the competency of a president. They've engaged in this transparent, now very transparent fraud. But this flame should be turned up to 100 now. And
we're talking about the commercial oven range.
Right.
That's right. Turn it up on the commercial oven range, not the regular little cooktop that you get when you first learn how to cook. We're talking about your full-blown 20,000 BTU gas burner. Turn it all the way up and put the pot on. They should be talking about the policies, the 1.8 million gotaways, almost 10 million illegal aliens in the country, sleeping in your kids' gym so they can't go to school live and have to go remote. Talking about the $9,000 a month to the illegals in Chicago. Every bit of the policy should be hit. Hit Kamala because she's next in line. Hit the governor of California for being the worst governor in the history of all governorships. Make it about policy. Make it about the things that Americans are discussing at their kitchen table, and leave the hits on Biden. You don't even have to say it. He's actually his own worst enemy, because I saw Dana Perino on Fox this morning outlining how he could have made a win out of this because he wasn't charged, but because he chose to stand around and take questions and turn it into a press conference, which he's obviously not fit for, he gave the Republicans more video clips. I played a couple today. Every single bit of what he's doing hurts him. So let him hurt himself, and we address ourselves to policy where we can win.
You know, we got to lay those policies, though, at the feet of Joe Biden. They are his fault. Don't talk so much about the issues with the mental acuity. Gregg, Gianno, Stacy, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.